Joining us now is New York Times investigative reporter David Fahrenthold. David, you've gone through these tax returns. Let's drill down on those foreign bank accounts. The filing showed he had bank accounts in China, the UK, Ireland. We've been reporting on this since we saw them last Friday, I guess, Friday night. Does this mean he was doing business in these countries?
Well, in some cases, yes, and in many cases, we knew that. Trump has golf courses in Scotland. He has a golf course in Ireland. He has properties or businesses in the UAE and other places around the world. So some of those things were not a surprise to me. The China one was. That was a surprise because Trump had talked vaguely about doing business in China, starting a licensed hotel there, perhaps. He had shell companies that had the names of Chinese cities. But as far as we knew, he'd never done anything there. And Trump had said in a debate in 2020 that long ago he had shut down any plans for development in China. So we still don't know what the purpose of that Chinese bank account was and why it appears to have still been active throughout his presidency.
And he responded, we should point out, over the weekend about the release of the taxes. Let's listen.
The radical Democrat Congress illegally obtained and leaked my personal tax returns, which show only that I've had tremendous success. It's been an amazing period of time. The seizure of these confidential records was completely unconstitutional. There is no legitimate legislative purpose for their action. It's nothing but another deranged political witch hunt, which has been going on from the day I came down the escalator in Trump Tower.
So, David, we don't often play these factually incorrect claims by the former president, but to claim that he had great success when these tax returns show exactly the opposite. He is not a successful businessman. I think the only time he had a profit was when he was posting some of the money he had inherited from his father. Also, no charitable donations, and minimal charitable donations, and then none in the last year. I mean, it's really pretty extraordinary. And that his pledge to donate his $400,000 presidential salary was not kept at all.
That's what stuck out to me. And that was something that Trump had promised. And I have to say, looking back in his life, this was a very common thing that he did with charity. When he was going to make a lot of money with a new project, a new TV series, in one case, a board game, a vodka brand, he would always say, I'm really rich. I don't need this money. So all the money I make off this thing, I'm going to give to charity. And what we had found before he was president was that often he did not follow through with those promises. And now we see that his promise to give his presidential salary to charity also fell off. In 2020, after several years of donating, following through on that promise, in 2020, he stopped donating his presidential salary. At the same time, his business was tanking. He just took the money and didn't give it back. So that was something we thought had happened, but it was satisfying to see for sure that he had not given the money away.
And one other thing, he said that there was no legislative purpose, but there was a purpose in getting the tax returns. It's arguable about whether they should have been released. But in getting the tax returns, because what they discovered is that the IRS did not, in 3 out of the 5 years that he filed while he was still in office, in 3 out of those 5 years, they did not do the audit that they are supposed to do, the mandatory audit. And so there are a lot of unanswered questions as to why the IRS, someone he had personally appointed, did not do what is required of all presidents and vice presidents, which is audit them each year. And in fact, they didn't audit it. They didn't audit him at all until questions were raised by the committee. And on that very day, they launched the final audit, which was released after he left office. Just, David, if you stand by for a second, because Barbara McQuaid is joining us now, of course, the former prosecutor, law professor from Michigan, the University of Michigan. And we would just want to say, we're sorry about TCU. And we know you're in mourning. But aside from that big playoff game, let's talk about also what Chuck Rosenberg wrote, our colleague and an MSNBC contributor, wrote that in an opinion piece in Politico that the committee's decision to publish the returns was unfair to the former president. Where do you stand?
I think Chuck has a very good point. I think we need to be measured when we think about what we're doing, what steps we're taking. But I disagree with Chuck on this one. I think that the committee had a legitimate purpose in seeking those returns. That is, to determine whether the IRS was properly conducting audits. Concluded, in fact, it was not properly conducting those audits. And I think in light of the highly political debate surrounding this issue, it was important to public confidence to share those records with the public so that they could see for themselves what was at issue. And so I think we should use caution and not have different rules for people we don't like versus people we do like. But I think that when someone is president of the United States, they open themselves to scrutiny in a way that should require the exposure of one's tax. So I disagree with Chuck on that.